The 2-9 Houston Rockets were in town to face off against a banged-up Toronto Raptor team, still missing Pascal Siakam as Scottie Barnes continues to struggle with that right ankle, and the Raptors unfortunately suffer yet another devastating injury in a season that has already been full of them. The Raptors pull it out 116-109 behind a combined 59 points from OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet. Otto Porter Jr. had his best game as a Toronto Raptor, 14 points off the bench, including 2 crucial threes down the stretch, which really sealed the game. And if the Raptors were looking for some playmaking off the bench and wondering where the heck it was going to come from, I think they got an answer tonight. So I'm going to break down the game for you. I'm going to give you my 3 key takeaways. If you're new around here, my name is Robert. This is Pensari Basketball. Hit like, subscribe, grab your coffee, and let's get to it. My first point of the night is that Thaddeus Young was incredible, and if you've been following this channel for any amount of time, you know how much I love Thaddeus Young. I have for a very long time now, dating back to his time in Philadelphia, then in Indiana, in Chicago. He's been such a presence, not only in the locker room as just such a great dude and just inspiring people with his entrepreneurial ventures, and just off the court stuff is just, it's next level. If there's anyone on this team that I could have a coffee with for 2 hours, it would be Thaddeus Young for sure. And he's just such a good dude. But on the court, all of that point forward stuff that he's been doing pretty much his whole life, it really shines when you really are lacking playmaking all across the board right now. Scottie obviously is laboring on that ankle. Fred VanVleet really isn't much of a playmaker, and while I think that Otto Porter has some passing ability and Christian Coloco has flashed a lot in the short roll, I really do think that apart from Scottie, the one player that I trust to connect and initiate an offense at this point is Thaddeus Young. And you saw it a few times tonight. I think it was in the third quarter where Scottie initiated the offense, and then they sort of used Thaddeus Young as a hub in the post, and he just sort of has to kick off the play. And sometimes it's just about getting things started, the pass that leads to the pass, and Thad's really good at that. He sees exactly your next pass, and he's not shy to tell you about it. So he'll direct a guy with his eyes. Like, he might pass out to Gary Trent Jr., and then he'll direct Gary Trent Jr. with his hand to show him the opening. Not every playmaker has to rack up 14 assists or 13 assists like Nikola Jokic. A lot of playmakers out there are actually just connectors within the offense, and Thad is just one of the better ones in the NBA. I'm very happy that the Raptors re-signed him. Over the last few weeks, when I said the box score isn't telling you everything, this is what I mean. 0 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 rebound, but he was plus 21, and I don't take plus minus as gospel when it comes to box score, because there's a lot of factors, including, you know, which lineup you play with, who you're playing with against the other team. Was Luka on the bench? Was Luka not on the bench? All of that influences plus minus a lot. But tonight it felt like the Raptors just played a very different brand of basketball when the ball was going through Thaddeus Young, and it really shows in that plus 21. Key number 2. Get ready, comment section. I was ready to completely move on from the Fred VanVleet slander 3 quarters in. He was much better tonight, taking shots in rhythm. There were even a couple of passes where I'm like, nice. You know, he had an alley-oop to OG Anunoby, which was just awesome. I am used to Fred VanVleet making about 10 to 15 boneheaded plays every single game. And I'll tell you what bothers me. When you listen to the other team's broadcasts, they will actually call it out. They'll be like, wow, that was a rough pass. Wow, that was a bad pass. Oh, how did he not see that? They'll actually call it out. But when you listen to Matt and Jack, or, you know, when you listen to Matt and Alvin, they never call it out. And I think that just sort of annoys me. And I get that being critical of players on your own team is just weird. Sometimes it was great. Like, he had that nice little layup, then he had another 3 where he missed, but then he passed out to Otto Porter, which kicked off, you know, Otto hitting 2 back-to-back threes. I think he was okay. He was better than he was last game, but it's still too much. And look, last year I saw Fred VanVleet stat pad his way against really bad teams. There were a lot of depleted teams that were, you know, either, you know, facing COVID protocols, and I just saw him really stat pad against those teams. And then later on in the season, you know, he continued to keep that same offensive load that he had when he was shooting so well against these bad teams. But now against the good teams, he was now, like, I think for 4 straight months, he shot 29% from 3. What works against the Houston Rockets is not going to work against the Denver Nuggets. It's not going to work against the Bucks, okay? You doing this to Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green, both of whom are notorious for being terrible defenders. The only starter, now again, I'm not using plus minus as gospel here, and I'm gonna say that straight up. I'm not an idiot. I understand that other things do influence it. But OG Anunoby was the guy who had to play with that second unit. It wasn't Fred VanVleet. And despite the fact that he had to do that, he's still plus 18. So OG Anunoby ends the night plus 18 because he was just that good. I think if he didn't have to play those minutes with that second unit, he probably would have been plus 24. But Fred VanVleet, despite not having to play those minutes with that second unit much tonight, was a -1. Again, on a night where your team won by 7, you're the sole starter that's -1. Your backups, you know, like, I continue to say it, I don't think Fred VanVleet necessarily makes anyone better but himself. And I'm going to keep saying it because I don't think he does. I think there's a lot of opportunities where, you know, there will be an open shooter in the corner and Fred will pass him the ball. But because the pass is so off target, by the time the shooter gathers it, the defense has already recovered. There was one play, and if I'm not mistaken, I made a note of it. It was, you know, Scottie had a smaller player in the post, and so Scottie had sealed. But then Fred threw the pass in a way that it was like 5 feet outside the catch radius, so Scottie had to jump out and get it. By the time he jumps out and gets it, the defense sees what's happening, and then he goes to the rim and ends up getting blocked. So it's just small things like this where if you're really focusing and honing in on the game, you're like, my God, man, like if you just throw that pass a little bit more accurately, instead of, you know, maybe more accurate for you because when you throw it that far away from the defender, you almost eliminate the chance of you picking up a turnover, but it also completely kills the player you're passing to's advantage. And so there's these small little things that I think need to get cleaned up. And honestly, through 3 quarters, I had almost no issues with how Fred played. The 4th quarter, just, I don't want to see that anymore. And I know I'm going to see that because, you know, there's obviously, with Scottie Barnes injured right now, OG and everyone on the team sort of looking at him as a leader, and everyone's sort of just passive when it comes to him. You know, when he's on the court, Scottie barely initiates. Like, I think the 3 times in the 4th quarter, Fred had to pass the ball back to Scottie Barnes in order to say, hey, you initiated after 2 ugly possessions in a row where Fred got into the air and threw the ball away or whatever. So what do you say, right? You take 26 shots to get 32 points. You're the sole starter that's negative in the plus minus department. You do this against a terrible team. Yeah, I'm not blind to what you're doing, Fred. I get it. You know, I get it. And to those of you who are now commenting on the previous video saying like, oh my God, Fred sure showed you. No, he didn't. He's still not a point guard. My entire argument was that he's not a point guard. My argument wasn't that he can't score 32 points against the Houston Rockets. My argument was that he doesn't make anyone better. And I don't think anyone was really better for having him on the court tonight. Man, like it's so irritating to see him play in these 6 to 7 minute stretches where he does everything right. And you're like, yeah, just do that like all the time. Just space out and, you know, hit those shots from the corner, hit the shots from the break. There was a shot where I think he shot with like 20 seconds left on the clock, and I was like, that's a great shot. He was wide open. It was just in rhythm. He got the ball exactly where he needed it. Great shot, man. I don't care if Fred VanVleet takes 30 shots. I don't care if Fred VanVleet takes 45 shots. It doesn't matter. Okay, 45 shots might be extreme. I care about the role as initiator, and I just don't think that he does it very well, and I didn't love it tonight. I didn't hate it as much as I did last game, so maybe it's something that's getting better. But if I'm in for another month with Siakam out, if I'm in for another month of Fred VanVleet doing that whole thing that he did last year, this is going to be a very ugly stretch of basketball to watch. Moving on to key number 3, the other guys off the bench. So Otto and Thad were incredible tonight. I really loved what they both did. Thaddeus Young on defense is just, he's good. But Otto Porter on defense, man, like this guy's hands, like he has, so Fred VanVleet on defense is good. I think like fans who are critical of him on defense, there are some shortcomings, of course. Fred VanVleet contesting threes, it's almost always a guaranteed bucket. Fred VanVleet in the post, it's almost a guaranteed bucket. But as a team defender, Fred VanVleet is awesome. Otto Porter is that plus, right? Like he has abilities to disrupt plays that are just on his side of the court. Like, he gets his hands in the passing lane, he digs into the cookie jar a little bit. Like, when guys are going by, he'll swipe at it, poke at it. He's just a menace on defense, and he just really knows how to play. And the fact that, of course, he's such an amazing shooter, and I'm so happy that the Raptors offense is finally generating some open looks for him. Man, continue to give it some time, and it's just going to shift. I don't think defenses are fully registering just how good a shooter Otto is. He's probably like a top 2, top 3 all-time Raptor shooter. I am, of course, acknowledging that Jason Kapono and Peja Stojakovic are quote-unquote ex-Raptors, so I won't say the best Raptor shooter ever, but he is right up there as one of the greatest Raptor shooters of all time right off the bat. But those other guys on the bench, they are trouble. And we're talking right now Chris Boucher, who is really struggling for whatever reason. I mean, he was really off to a hot start to begin the season, but he's really cooled off the last few games. Precious Achiuwa, before his injury, just a lot of bunnies around the basket, a lot of questionable shots. Really weird to watch it. Like, he just doesn't seem like the same player he was last year. So Delano Banton, honestly, just not a great initiator at this point. Not really, like, I see him as more of a small forward. This point guard experiment at some point has got to end with him. He's a point forward. Like, he's not a point guard. It's just, it doesn't feel like he's a point guard in the strictest sense of what it means to be a point guard in the modern NBA. Just can't shoot or score well enough. Doesn't quite read and react to situations nearly well enough. But in transition, as a secondary sort of playmaker, I think he could really carve a niche for himself in the NBA. And it was interesting watching tonight because we were facing off against the Houston Rockets, and the Houston Rockets are just full of players that I really believe in, right? From Jabari Smith Jr., just love him. Daishen Nix, right, who I actually wanted us to draft over David Johnson when that draft decision came around. Usman Garuba, Alperen Şengün. Like, I just love Josh Christopher. Like, I just love the Houston Rockets roster, and I just think they have such a depth of talent that I believe in. So I think that they have a really bright future. But yeah, to not get off topic here, I worry about those three. And I'm wondering if maybe the Raptors would be wise, at least, to give Jeff Dowtin Jr. and Justin Champagnie a chance. Now, why do I say this? I think as much as I believe in Precious Achiuwa's two-way potential, again, as an athlete, as much as I understand Chris Boucher's impact, I think tonight we saw the impact of intelligence on the basketball court, right? We saw the impact of guys buying into their roles and guys playing the right way. And one thing I will tell you is that Justin Champagnie and Jeff Dowtin Jr. really play the right way. And personally, I would just like to see them just get a shot. With Pascal Siakam out against these sort of bad teams, what do you have to lose? I watched Summer League, and I know that Delano Banton scored a ton of points in Summer League, but to me, it felt like Jeff Dowtin Jr. was leaps and bounds better than him in just about everything on the basketball court. And I just do not understand why Nick Nurse is continuing to play Delano Banton, again, at point, right? Like, that is probably the more baffling part, because in Summer League, we were seeing Delano more move towards small forward, and it felt like the direction there was pretty clear that he was going to be more off the ball this year. But I guess maybe his shot has not come as far as they would like, and so the offense really just goes in the tank every single time this guy tries to initiate it. And as much as I would like to believe in the long-term potential of Delano Banton, just as I believe in the long-term potential of a lot of players on this team, I just don't see why, given they're relatively close in age, why Jeff Dowtin Jr. doesn't get that shot too, because I think that he would do a lot more with it. If I were ranking out playmakers on this roster, like people that I trust, I would probably put Scottie Barnes as number 1, and my number 2 would be Jeff Dowtin Jr. I really do think he's that good as a playmaker. I mean, he finds guys. He has a lot of potential, man. Like, I just think that it would be very important for a team that seems to be laboring offensively in the half court to have a lead guard and a lead initiator who really knows how to initiate an offense. So anyway, I could be wrong, but I would like to see Justin Champagnie and Jeff Dowtin Jr. The Houston Rockets shot 25% from 3, which was just terrible. The Raptors shoot 34% from 3. That's really the difference in this game. The Raptors took a higher volume of threes, and they made a considerable amount more. But in terms of assists, like, I mean, this is a young, inexperienced team. You would expect that that means that they're just iso balling everything and trying to go one-on-one and being selfish. But the Houston Rockets had 10 more assists tonight than the Toronto Raptors, 29-19. I think that's a really encouraging sign for them. And, you know, overall, I think this was one of those wins where you burn the tape, you say, okay, you know, we won ugly, we won something, let's just move on. In terms of my final thoughts, OG Anunoby looked incredible today. I really, really think he's turned a corner here as a scorer, and he's just finally finding ways to contort his body in ways that are advantageous as opposed to disadvantageous. I am still a little bit nervous every time he goes down, but that's just going to come with the territory given his extensive injury history and the Raptors' terrible luck with injuries so far this season. I really think that Scottie Barnes is laboring defensively. I don't know what to do about it at this point. I've ranted about it for 3 straight videos that he shouldn't be playing, and I still insist that he shouldn't be playing because it's just so obvious. He's giving blow-bys to just about everyone. I haven't seen him stop a single player for 3 games. Like, yeah, he had a couple of blocks tonight, and he's trying his best, and he is definitely, in the last game, I said he was probably not a net positive. Tonight, I will say, yes, Scottie was a net positive, but because he's so limited in terms of his mobility, I don't know if this is a good idea to keep playing through this. Now, obviously, I'm not a doctor, and Alex McKechnie and the training staff, they probably know better what their long-term plan is, but I hope that there's no damage that's continuing to happen, because look, man, playing an NBA game is just, it's tough on your body, right? And especially with the way the Raptors coach defense, like the amount of motion is required. Scottie Barnes led the entire league, if I'm not mistaken. He was either first or second in the league in distance traveled on defense last year, and the Raptors do require so much switching and so much activity on defense, and all of that activity requires your ankles, right? So again, he's laboring, he's doing his best. I wish him well. In terms of more parting thoughts, like the Raptors started the season out with, it was the second hardest schedule to start the season. And after that Chicago game, they have now hit what is like the easier part. And obviously, if you get some of those tough games out of the way early, you are going to see a softer schedule later on. The next 3 games are against teams that are below 500. The OKC Thunder, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is balling out of his mind. The Detroit Pistons, that will be tough. Now, I know how much Dwayne Casey likes winning against the Toronto Raptors, and matchup wise, honestly, Cade against Fred VanVleet is going to be a tough night for Fred VanVleet. Now, I'm not a supporter of Cade. I'm not one of those Cade hype boys. I've been very critical of him on this channel, but man, that guy, he is going to be trouble. Like, he has a 7-foot wingspan. This is exactly the type of player that Fred VanVleet tends to really struggle against. And if he gets him to switch off of him, he's got Jaden Ivey, who's not that much smaller than Cade, and Saddiq Bey. It's just a lot of size, and I just don't think that that's a game. Like, if there was one game, I also think that the Indiana Pacers and their enormous backcourt and, you know, just the length, right? The length of Benedict Mathurin, who's not a great defender, but, you know, he has some length, and Tyrese Halliburton is another long point guard who has some two-way ability. I think this could be, it'd be easy for me to say this is 3 straight wins for the Toronto Raptors because they're facing 3 teams under 500. I don't see it. I think one of these is definitely going to be a loss, and if I had to pick, it's probably, like, I can't even pick. Like, all 3 teams have really good lead initiators who can give the Raptors fits off the bounce. As much as I would like to think that these are easy wins, I don't think anything is going to be easy for the Toronto Raptors as long as Scottie Barnes continues to be injured. This is weird. Like, this is one of those wins that sort of feels like a loss. It doesn't, like, I should be happy that, okay, they beat the Houston Rockets, but just how they played, like with Precious going out with that injury, the bench sort of looking disconnected. Other than OG and Thaddeus Young and Otto Porter, there just wasn't a lot to be like super excited about in this game. So, Gary Trent with 4 assists. I mean, when I saw that at the half, Gary Trent was leading the team in assists. I mean, he didn't pick up a single other one the entire night, but good job, Gary Trent Jr. Like, I was so critical of his decision making and his ball dominance and his chucking. But Gary Trent Jr. has not pissed me off once all year. Like, I'm not kidding. Even on the bad moments, I'm like, yeah, it's just Gary being Gary for 5 minutes. He's been awesome. Like, he's been really good. I went on Raptors Digest and said he was the worst defender on the team, and I'll stick to that. I will stick with that. But on offense, where he drove me absolutely bananas last year as he took shots out of rhythm and sort of hijacked the offense, I've really liked him this year. Like, I don't know what shifted in his brain. I don't know, but even with Pascal Siakam out, like, it's been really encouraging to see him taking more and more positive decisions that are team-oriented. I'm wondering what his career high for assists is now. Gary Trent Jr. once had seven assists in a game. That's crazy. And in terms of interesting stats of the day, the Raptors last year were 7-4 to start the season before Pascal Siakam came back. When Pascal Siakam did come back, they proceeded to lose 4 straight, which interestingly means that 12 games in last year, they were also 7-5, and 12 games in this year, they're also 7-5. So that's your interesting stat of the day. Anyway, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of Jeff Dowtin Jr. getting some of those Delano Banton minutes, and or Justin Champagnie getting some of those Boucher minutes? And definitely let me know what you thought of Thaddeus Young's 0-point night, this brilliant 0-point night, probably my favorite 0-point night in Raptor history. I have to check on that. I think there was another one that I really appreciated, but this was up there as far as proving the point that the box score does not tell the entire story. Anyway, make sure to hit subscribe and like. Till next time, peace.